Ever feel like sometimes, things are spinning out of control?
Yeah. I
I'm
know that feeling, like you're just not in the driver's seat.
Exactly. It can be a little unnerving, right?
Absolutely.
But what if I told you that there's a different perspective hidden right within the Christmas story? One that can actually bring a lot of comfort.
Oh, I'm intrigued. The Christmas story.
Yeah. Today, we're going to deep dive into God's sovereignty.
Okay.
We're looking specifically at an excerpt from 12 Days of God's Character, the Christmas story, day 10. And we're going to really break down how grasping this idea of God's sovereignty can actually bring peace, especially when things feel uncertain or maybe those big dreams seem super far off.
Yeah. I think that's a struggle a lot of people can relate to, so using the Christmas story as a lens to view that, I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that, Christmas, a time that we usually associate with joy and celebration, is actually a really powerful picture of God's control and plan, even when things seem totally chaotic.
Yeah, that's true. That time of year, people are rushing around shopping and stressed out. It's not exactly peaceful.
Right. It's like the opposite of peace sometimes.
Yeah.
So how does the Christmas story actually connect to God being in control? I mean, it's a story about a baby, right?
Yeah, that's right. It is. But the excerpt, very cleverly, links Jesus' lineage way back to promises that God made centuries earlier, specifically to Abraham and King David.
Okay. So we're talking Old Testament here.
We are. Genesis 12.2-3 and 2 Samuel 7.16 lay out these huge promises. From Abraham will come this great nation, one that brings blessing to all people. And for David, a kingdom that will last forever.
Those are some big sweeping promises. So how does a baby, in a manger actually fulfill something that huge?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. The excerpt shows us how Jesus, because he comes from that direct line, becomes the fulfillment of those promises. He is the blessing to all nations. And his kingdom, the spiritual one, it will endure.
Wow.
It's a long game playing out across, generations.
It is a long game. That's an amazing connection. It makes you think, about how God might be working on things in our lives, even right now, that we can't even see yet.
Right. Exactly.
But let's be honest, waiting for those promises, it's not always easy.
Oh, no, it's not. No.
And the excerpt actually mentions that even Abraham and David faced challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to remember that human element. Abraham waited over 100 years for his son Isaac.
100 years.
I know. It's hard to even imagine.
That makes my waiting for a table at a restaurant seem just trivial.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the point, isn't it?
I think so.
Learning to trust God's timing, even when it just doesn't make sense to us.
Precisely. And you know what? Often that period of waiting, it serves a purpose.
Okay.
For Abraham, it might have been about purifying his faith, stripping away any reliance on his own strength. And for us, God may use those waiting periods to shape our character, to prepare us for what he has planned. It's refining us in a way.
Yeah, that is a really interesting way to look at it. It's not just like passive waiting. It's how God is actually using that time.
Right. He's working.
He's working. But the excerpt also mentions that God's plan, it's bigger than just our little individual lives, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
God is concerned for all of his people, not just our individual wants and desires.
You okay?
This ties back to the Christmas story perfectly because Jesus came to save all of humanity, not just a select few.
Wow. Yeah, that's a humbling thought. It kind of shifts your perspective, doesn't it?
For sure.
It's not just about me and my little world. It's about something much, much bigger.
Exactly.
So that leads to the excerpt's call to action, which is to walk in obedience and faith, just like Abraham and David.
Right.
They didn't always understand what God's plan was, but they chose to trust and obey.
They did. And that's a powerful example for us.
But what does that actually look like in our everyday lives,
Yeah,
We're not building arcs or fighting giants.
that's true. But it could be as simple as choosing to be kind, even when you've been wronged. It could be about trusting God to provide when finances are tight, or holding on to hope when things feel bleak.
Okay.
It's about aligning our will with God's, even when we don't see the full picture.
Okay, I can see how that all connects. So ultimately, the Christmas story, this idea of God's sovereignty, it's all about trusting that He is in control, even when we can't see it.
Yes. And that's where the comfort comes in, knowing that even in the midst of uncertainty, God is still sovereign.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not like God is this distant, uncaring force.
Right.
Romans 8.28 reminds us that He's actually working for the good of those who love him.
That's such an important reminder, too, because sometimes it doesn't feel like it.
It really doesn't.
But we have to remember that his ways are higher than our ways.
They really are. That's a comforting thought, especially in a world that can feel so unpredictable. So, if God is truly sovereign, if he's in control of everything, how does that change your perspective on what's happening in your life right now? Those challenges, those dreams that you're holding on to. It's something to really think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.